Did you see that? 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 Kirsten and Mark.
Hey, stop it. That was good. Did you see that?
I'm excited to talk about the next episode, but before we get there, right, we have the other stuff. Um,
Yeah.
let me tell you what I just finished cooking and
Yeah.
because I finished it right before joining as well. I love cooking salmon, Mark. It is delicious. If you are like me and you like go to Kroger or wherever your store of choice is and you buy a whole like fillet of salmon, sometimes it's already maybe tri cut into pieces. You could buy it just like the tails or whatever. Anyways, it's so good and it's so healthy and it's often and can be so easily prepared with like salt, pepper, maybe a little garlic, EVOO, and then like anything individually that is like in your general seasoning. I typically add, oh, I had it right next to me while I was eating it. I thought it was still there. Do you know what tagine is? It's in the fruit and vegetable produce section of most grocery stores, and it is lime based, red in color, dry uh, in its way seasoning. It's good. I put that on my salmon. I really put it on like everything.
I don't think I've ever heard of this before because when you were describing where it's found in the grocery store, I'm like, oh no, I don't. I've never been there for seasonings, so it's just like I don't think I've had this,
Yeah,
especially in relation to salmon.
yeah, especially in relation to salmon, but it really can go on anything. So in that way, I also put it on so many things. It's so good. I put it on my salmon. It was so good.
That sounds really good. That's interesting. You mentioned a lot of fruit because I've been there several times and had like their fruit cups, and so I probably had it, or at the very least seen it. So I'll just keep an eye out for it next time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Um,
What'd you make with your salmon? Did you have any sides with it, or just eat some salmon?
just some salmon tonight. I didn't do anything else with it.
Mm-hmm.
I have other things to do with it, but
Mm-hmm.
like as far as sides go, but I just chose because the salmon I actually pre like fixed the other day. I just reheated tonight and had to do the dishes because I ate the final piece of it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I have some cabbage that I've yet to fix, so that's still in there for later in the week. Did you vote, Mark? Have you voted? Do you have a voting plan?
I have a plan, yeah. So I have my ballot, and then I'm gonna put it into a ballot box. So that's what I'm gonna do.
I love it.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I had a plan and a backup plan because, that's what they tell you to do, and one wants to be prepared. So, yes, my first plan worked. I had a plan. I voted in person. So, yeah. And it felt, you know, high stakes for sure. Also, didn't know the temperature of the polling room of the day. So I was like, all right, see like cool people outside. It's not a cop car. You look cool. You look cool. Yeah, watch a few people go in and out. I was like, nobody looks like frustrated. It always feels really good to vote. And I secretly kind of poll the room, which is definitely a judgment call. Through my personal lens of how I see the people in the room, like I think
Mm-hmm.
people do. But I think I give a room a fair shake, and it feels good to think that the majority of people, I think, voted in favor of humanity. You know what I mean? while we're on like politics, this
Mhm.
political episode.
We talked a decent amount about politics last week too, right?
I think we did, yes.
It
Because we
was
talked
almost
about post debate.
yeah, it was almost kind of like, I mean, we could have made, if we wanted to, we could have even split them in two. Like we talked a bit about it, like in a good way. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think so too. And just to hit that drum again, there's been another debate, technically the last of this, or the second debate, but it was on the third original debate's date because Mr. Trump, pulled out of the second one because he had that Rona and babied out and did not want to do the digital one, whatever. So we had the respective town halls. Same time, different networks, strategic on Mr. Trump team's part, of course, but that also meant you had to kind of choose which one you were going to watch, unless you went back and forth and or watched one after the other. I did not watch Mr. Trump's. I caught it on dim highlights though. And that was enough, right? That's typically all you need for one of his. Like the highlight reel will tell you exactly what it was. Man, to be an interviewer for him has got to be an experience like few others.
I feel like the only people that have, I shouldn't say the only people, because I mean, like, kudos if you even try, honestly. But I feel like the people that have had the most success interviewing him are the ones that can really like stay on him and not necessarily, sorry about that, and not necessarily get him to admit to something, but more so to just like let him go. Like the one, I forget the interviewer's name, but the one, it wasn't too long ago where he had that stack of papers with the charts.
The Axios interview.
Yes. And he just let him go. That was one of the better interviews I've seen of his, because he just asked for facts each time. Yeah. And didn't like just didn't let anything slide. And so then he had to keep trying to, so then Trump had to keep trying to justify. And then I think that's all you can really do.
Because he either can't justify or his justifications are weak and or false in some nature to invalidate anything that comes thereafter. So you're like, you are the best player on the other team.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a good one. I mean, it was so good, it made him call upon his own charts that invalidated his own argument. Oh man. Yeah. The Biden town hall was, a whole different vibe. Thank goodness. And of course, I will say I'd like to join his team for like a realism coach, right? What are the real people thinking and saying? And that is informative. And there are some things that I think and or say, and I'm a huge Biden supporter, right? Like, we ain't scared. Let's put it out there. Team Biden, we here for it. Team Biden Harris, what? But at the same time, there are things that, if known, could speak to or stop making so aware of these like subtle pitfalls that could just be avoided, right? And I think he might have someone like that, because someone told him something that he at least corrected. I don't know if he mentioned it in his most recent town hall this past week, but he kept misquoting Trump on the simplest of quotes. And I was like, stop doing that. Stop it. Don't quote it if you can't get it right, because don't do that. Don't do that. to yourself. Don't do that. Somebody tell him. Someone? Anybody in here? Like, and I've heard him get it accurately quoted. I think maybe on a Friday afternoon. Maybe he was speaking somewhere after that town hall, and he quoted it accurately, and I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
What did you think of the town halls?
Well, I guess I don't know like how numbers work precisely, but if I'm Trump and at least nationally, like I'm trailing, I'm actually kind of curious why he chose to have it at the same time. Only because it seems like that would take undecided voters, if that's who he was going after anyway, away from being able to even see him.
Yep.
It seems like it'd make more sense if I was Trump to like either be on a different day or like before or after Biden, as opposed to like essentially having to split the numbers.
I fully agree.
And then was it a so I wasn't watching everything, so I don't know when this happened, but I saw a picture of Vernon Jones crowd surfing without a mask.
So this is at the or after or in the crowd around at some point during the Trump town hall.
So I believe this was during a Trump rally in Macon, Georgia, when he was in town.
Oh.
So I guess I'm kind of switching topics a bit, but let me share my screen.
No, but that tracks because he was in town yesterday and today, I believe, campaigning. Because although I'm gonna need him to recognize, you got a problem if you're campaigning in a state that was yours last time.
Yeah. So the headline is.
Oh my gosh! I see it. Oh.
I'm trying to see if where's the
picture was at the top. It's on the right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. So I just saw that. I saw that picture, and for a second I was just like, "Is that real? Is that real?" You know what I'm saying? It's horrifying. It's horrifying. It's so bad. It's so bad. One, it's just like, first off, you're at the rally, first off. But then second of all, you're at the rally with no mask and you are crowd surfing. So you got hands, people, keep them up. It's just so bad. And he's not enjoying himself.
No. I mean, but, or is he? Because if you're there and doing all that, then you want that attention from those people for reasons that I don't think you or I can truly understand, because I don't think we are those people. But like, maybe he's having the best day of his life. Maybe dims the times for him.
I mean, I for his sake, I hope so. I hope that was worth it, because it's just like you're taking a risk, man. So
how embarrassing.
Yeah. So not really related to the town hall, but that
all the same.
But that was, as far as politics go, that's kind of what stuck out in my. So.
Anyway, I have been listening to someone for a while now, but like, I know sometimes I forget that it's not about just like what we saw in this other stuff portion, but what we listened to. And when we were talking about those albums last time, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta remember to say this. There's an artist called Jay LaMotta, female artist called Jay LaMotta. One of my new favorites. I've gotta like send you some of my favorite songs of hers. They are so like, they just make you, I don't even know, but I love it. like smooth but invigorating and energizing but calming. It's a whole vibe. You just like, yes, I want to listen to whatever music you put out. It's so fantastic. Jay LaMotta, come on our channel.
Oh, that's fun. How do you spell her name?
The letter J, like the initial J dot LaMotta, LAMOTTA. So wonderful. The songs I would suggest if you're looking up something is Back in Town and That's What I Call Freedom. Those two are like the bee's knees. Buzz, buzz.
I've been reading I've never read like an online comic before, or maybe I have. I mean, I'm sure I have, but
Online, like only online.
there may be a paper version. Someone like talked about it online, and I was just like, oh, I like this person's taste for other recommendations. So I was like, let me see what this comic's about. And I think I'd like seen parts of it shared on Facebook or something, and maybe read bits of it before. And I was like, let me just start this from the beginning and see what it's all about. And I started reading it, and I was like, I've loved it. It's called Let's Play, and it's basically just a romantic comedy, and it's about like this introverted nerdy woman that's also a game developer, and she has like her regular day job, but ever since she's been a kid, she's wanted to design video games. So on her own time, she like designs this game, and it's, I guess it's kind of like about her dealing with like trying to develop this game as well as like balancing her work life and like the people in her life.
What does
And
she do for her day job?
she works at her dad's company, and she's like I don't really know exactly what her specialty is, but you know, she's like, well, that's kind of part of the story too. Is like when you meet her, she works at her dad's company. You don't find out that it's her dad's company until a little later. That's not like a big spoiler or anything like that, but it's her dad's company. And when she first starts out in her story, she's been there for a little while, but she's still relegated to like interny type stuff. So she's capable of way more, but she hasn't really like, at least at the start of the story, she hasn't had a chance to like take on bigger responsibilities just yet. But I mean, she's really smart, and so it's like she should be doing like, I don't know, project managing and like more analysis stuff for them, but just doesn't have the opportunity just yet. But it's cool. It's just sort of charming, I think. And they're like in these little bite-sized little bits, so it only takes a couple minutes to read like an episode. And I guess it's been around for a little while, because I guess maybe even a couple years, because I guess if they put them out weekly, the person that puts them out weekly, there's over 100 of them, so that probably means that this has been over the course of a couple years. Yeah, so I've enjoyed reading it, mainly just because it's like I think most of the characters are all likable, and you're sort of just kind of interested in them, and the writer or the creator of the comic does a good job of like over time unfolding how people are connected, and like I think the way that they like parse out information, like it's not everything all at once, you know, like it's just like, oh, that's a fun reveal, oh, that's a fun reveal, oh, this person knows that person. So just like basic stuff that is very effective. Yeah, so
What's it called?
called Let's Play.
Let's Play. All right. Yes, online comic life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've never really been much I mean, like I like the art in comics and things like that, but I've never been a person that reads them too often, just because, you know, I just have never really been into it. But with reading it online actually makes a lot more sense, because it's just like you just kind of scroll through it and click it. And to me, that's, yeah, precisely. And that's way different than like going to a store, buying like a little comic, reading it in 5 minutes, and then having to wait another week. I appreciate that ritual, and like I get how for folks that might be really cool, but I could never really get into that as a kid anyway. So.
I think it there's a time of people tied more so to tangible uh, literature, as far as newspapers, magazines, TV guides, right? That people are like, I don't know what your Google is. I'm going to wait for my TV guide to tell me what's coming on this week. So like the nature of paper, right? The nature of the tangible read. I think I'm definitely someone who still loves to read a physical book.
Yes. Yeah.
I have still some of my favorite books on my bookshelf. Some, yes, I can and have read digitally, but it's not the same. Similar to like listening to books, I mean, cast me for audiobooks. Yes, voiceover life. I'll read them all day. But as far as consuming, I typically like to read actual paper books. There's just something about it. So I guess I'm one of those people.
When it comes to books, I'm in the same boat. Like if it's especially like, I'd say especially like a nonfiction thing, I feel like I retain the information a little better if I'm holding a physical piece of paper. I'm able to underline. So like with books, I'll still buy like a physical copy. I think there's something like a comic where it's like, if it's a little bit more for like, at least in the case of this comic, like purely for entertainment, it's almost kind of just like looking at a screen, but you're reading it as opposed to like watching a show.
I think that sounds cool. If the creators of Let's Play want to come on our channel and talk with us, come on our channel and talk with us. We're Kirsten and Mark. We're I couldn't hold it together.
I love how smoothly you got into it. Like how smoothly you transitioned into song. I was like, oh, she's singing. This is great.
It's like, love how smoothly you get in. Sad how rough you get out. Because I really did just start laughing. I couldn't even finish. Do you want to get into the next episode?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds great.
I wonder if I watched the right one. Yeah. Okay, great. Because I usually try to stay one apart. Like, I think episode 4, talking about episode 4 is, I think, the only one that's not up on the channel yet. So yes, let's get into episode 5 of season 2. What? Yeah, boy. I know magic. No, I don't. I wish I did though.
I do wish I had like a couple like good magic tricks up my sleeve that I could do. Like when I entered into an office building, it's like going back to rom-coms, like in the Let's Play comic, for example. This doesn't happen in the Let's Play rom-com, but like for example, if I was a character in a rom-com and like, let's say 20-30 minutes into the show or into the movie, I'm making my entrance, I'd walk up to the front desk and be like, hey, you have something behind your ear. And I give them a quarter. They'd be like, thanks, mister. They'd be like, yeah. I'm also vying for the attention of whoever the protagonist in this movie is. I just feel like that's how you'd make an entrance. Anyway.
Does the person that works at the desk, is that person a 6-year-old boy?
I realized it sounded like it. I guess, honestly what it was, I just didn't want to do like a woman's voice for whatever reason. And I couldn't, and I didn't think to do like a deeper voice. So I was just like, let me just do like an androgynous voice. And so I guess it ended up coming out like a child. But that really was my thought process when deciding how to. Now I was like, well, what else could I have done? I could have done a Jamaican accent, but I don't do it well.
I follow that that track of thought. I see how you got to where you landed.
Yeah.
I think in the moment it was pretty funny because I was like, wait, is this a Hallmark Christmas movie? Is there an elf at the front desk? Because that is the rom-com.
I mean, I guess if it was a 6-year-old kid, the justification would be like at this office during the holidays, maybe it's the holiday party, bring your kid to work day, you know? And I'm like, oh, that's the kid. Got to make a good impression on the kid. Because then later I'll be like, Mommy, that was a nice man that gave me a quarter.
Yes, the son of the protagonist.
Yeah. We got to ask him to Christmas dinner. And it's like, oh, Billy, we can't do that. I'm sure he has somewhere to go. I'm like, actually, my flight back to Paris isn't until tomorrow. I have nowhere to stay.
Yes, rom-com writer.
Yeah. It was just like, oh, you wouldn't like what we're having for dinner. We're having, I do this weird thing where I put walnuts and pecans in the same pie. Yeah. No one's ever liked that recipe since your father. My father made the same recipe. You couldn't be from Louisiana. Yes, I am. But you don't have a Louisiana accent. Oh, I lost it. That worked in Paris.
The finishing of the thought, that like classic rom-com moment, but the frequency of how many times, I'm here for it. Like, let's have that happen a lot. That shit is really funny.
I think that, you know what's so interesting about that genre to me? I mean, there's a bunch of things that are interesting about it, but I was watching a Hallmark Christmas movie in October called Naughty or Nice. It was either Naughty or Nice or Naughty and Nice. I don't know. It was a rom-com. And the thing is, it's like the movie was like, I don't mean this like in a mean way, a good way, a charming way, whatever. I mean, it was like a little bit lazy just in terms of how they kind of like sleepwalk through all the different plot points. But I found myself still enjoying the movie. And I think it's because like we're so familiar with these like tropes of a rom-com. All you need to do is even like hint at them, and then the audience just like fills in the blanks in their own head. So it's just like the characters weren't very fleshed out. Like there were all these plot holes, but we're like, oh yeah, we know how this is supposed to go. Let me just see this happen, you know, like because this is what just has to happen in these movies. And I was just like, it's just kind of interesting.
Eventually, movies are just going to be ghost walking or sleepwalking through the plot points, right? And just movies are just going to turn into milestone moments. I feel like if we were to flash forward, or if a movie was to be made about the flashing forward exponentially with this concept as a basis, it would be hilarious how much they are trimmed down to just that, what you just said, just a series of moments, because everything else is just like filled in. All you need is the dots, and the viewer will connect them typically. And in that example,
you know, over the past week though, I was kind of thinking like what's going to happen to the movie format, like narratives that are like that 90 to 120 minute length, just because I mean movie theaters unfortunately are going through like this real challenge right now. And I mean, you know, like that's going to be a tough thing to recover from. And then also, I mean, even once it's safe to go back to movie theaters with crowded audiences again, it's just like that social habit will have been broken. You know, like it's just like people will be like, oh yeah, that was something that I did, you know? And then, but also I'm just kind of like, I mean, most of what I watch now are either like short clips online, or I binge like hours of a TV show. But and I still like movies a lot, but I'm just talking about like my viewing patterns. But it's just not so much like watching things that are in that 90-minute to 2-hour range. I don't know. It's just, I bring it up just because I was thinking about it over the past week. I think maybe around the time that I watched that Hallmark movie. But that Hallmark movie, that's kind of like a specific thing. I mean, it's just like, it's like the holidays, you're watching Christmas, movies with friends or relatives. It's like, that's almost kind of like a specific activity,
Yeah.
Um,
I think I think so many things, and that many of them are in agreement with everything that you just said. But it's like, I definitely am still in that like 90 to 120 minute, like, let's sit down and watch a thing. But I'll tell you what, I am probably disrupting my own viewing patterns because I am aware of and okay with the fact that I more so will binge a show, even if that means I'm watching 4 hours in comparison to 90 or 120 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Even though that seems ridiculous. Why would one opt for 4 hours of straight viewing? Because of the consumption in which we as the viewer are getting used to, that Netflix nature of
Yeah.
hit play, that series of things is gonna play until you tell it to stop. And typically the mind clicks back in with like, how many of these have I watched? In my case, and I think in quite a few, around 4. You become aware, even if you don't stop, even if you go on to 5 or 6, right? And then the sun comes up and you're like, where did the night go? You do become aware of like, how many have I watched? And I think that there are receipts to that effect because of the nature of Netflix as well. It's going to ask you after a couple episodes, are you still watching? More than likely, you are. And you're going to be like, nobody told you to stop. And you're going to click yes. Like, thank you for asking, but do as you're told and keep it going. Because yeah, I think so much of what you said is so true, that the nature of the beast is changing because of the nature of the consumption that's accessible at this point.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with it. I like binge worthy things. It's like a whole category, right? I think people even like the show in question, right? Umbrella Academy. They're made in mass consumption viewing targeted ways
Mhm.
with embedded cliffhangers. And even in the writing style I think has morphed into a binge worthy writing nature. You're not just writing for one episode, though you might want to think of that as a microcosm of the world. You're writing to engage people for a series that will be potentially consumed in one sitting.
Mhm.
It's like the real love child of a show and a movie. It's watching a show in a way that has a marathon-esque nature,
Mhm.
and it's become natural.
I have a question for you when you're binging. Do you go to the end of an episode to stop a binge session, or do you kind of stop in the middle of an episode? Because I've noticed that with myself, I find it easier to pick up in the middle of an episode as opposed to like starting an episode fresh. I don't know why, but I wonder if it's because I'm like, oh well, I can remember the last scene that happened, but there's something about like starting an episode fresh. I'm just like, okay, but what's everything that happened last episode?
Man, I don't know if I've ever really thought of that. I'm like thinking back. I do now think that I'm an end of the episode transition person. Like, if I'm gonna stop, it's gonna be in between episodes, or at an opportunity where I know I'm halfway through the 8. And so to have a reciprocal experience for the second half of what will probably be a second half viewing experience, I'm going to like I'm going to purposefully stop so that I can watch the final 4 in the next sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think unless this is what I will sometimes do. I know I've done it before. If I am trying to binge because that's the way my nature pulls me, but I have to stop, like I have to leave to hit the post office before it closes. And I've been pushing it and pushing it because I can't stop watching what it is, right? But then
Yeah.
I'm like, ah, I'm only 12 minutes into episode 5, but pause. I'll leave the TV on and everything, so much so that for what I have to leave for, I can leave for it. And then as soon as I come back and like, wash my hands or whatever, everything, I can just sit back down and hit play again and pick right back up. But those are in have to cases.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
What a good question.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, kind of like learning people's viewing habits. Because I think first, I think they're all like super similar. You know what I mean? Like I think we all like binge in similar ways, but I don't know. It's just like how interesting is it that, or anyway, to me, it's interesting that like the idea of me sitting down and watch a 2-hour movie is kind of tough, but like watching 5 episodes of TV back to back, not a problem.
Yeah.
Also, that we routinely may not necessarily stop like at the end of an episode, but like in the middle of one. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting stuff because when you're thinking about like how this stuff gets structured, how the shows get structured, it's yeah, it's just interesting. I just think about it sometimes, because I gotta imagine you wouldn't plot out a season the same way for Netflix that you would if you were airing it like week to week,
Right.
I just feel like it's a little different. Like I think about like a show like Atlanta, which is like one of my favorite shows. I feel like a show like that is actually good airs week to week as opposed to at least the way that it's put out originally. It's not, you're not giving it as like a 10 episode thing because I don't think, at least the way the first 2 seasons have gone, it's not really intended to be binged. It's like here's an episode, think about it for a week. Here's another episode, think about it for a week. Oh, you think where the season's going? Well, here's a completely different type of episode hitting a completely different tenor. Or like Mad Men, I felt like was that way too, where it's just like there were some seasons that I binged of Mad Men and others that I would like tune in from week to week. But I think a show with as many details as a show like Mad Men or Atlanta has, having a week to think about it is like an interesting viewing experience to me.
It like allows life to happen in between episodes, even
Mhm.
for the viewer, in a
Yeah.
way that seems like is in real time versus I don't know, maybe not, because I was going to say versus knowing all the episodes are already done, but that's still usually the case with episodic things. But I think you're right, there is a different approach and goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, TV. I do think eventually things are going to end up being very Black Mirror, where you just throw it up on the wall of your house and it's one of 5 choices because that's what TV has been boiled down to eventually.
Mhm.
Oh,
I gotta imagine that it's just like customization is just going to become more and more a part of it,
customized.
huh?
More and more customized.
I gotta think so. Where it's just like, what was that Dark Mirror movie where it's like you could choose your own adventure style? I didn't watch it, but
I don't think I watched that one either. I watched all the other like regular Black Mirror seasons as
Mhm.
far as I know. But that one I've heard about, but I don't think I watched that one either.
I'd be curious to see like if in the future if it became feasible, where it's like they get to know what kind of stories make us feel good, and then they're like, well, here's this movie for Kirsten. because we know that she likes these things to happen in this way. So here's this movie that everybody's getting, but here's your version of that movie, you know? Or maybe not that, maybe it's just like they're, I don't know. But I just feel like when you mention customization, I just feel like it's gonna be more like to even crazier levels just to make sure we don't stop watching, you know? So
I mean, it feeds into the idea of the algorithm, right? It gets to know you, and that's good and bad. It also leans into what's already happening with the Netflix for you category based on your last viewing history, even your search history or your Google history or your home pages for your internet browser, right? Again, the algorithm based on the things you search, talk about that your microphones pick up on, you are suggested to buy things, and you're like, you're right, I do need that. I was just talking about that. So, man, do I for real think not only will it be customization, like customizing Inception, but to potentially a detrimental degree, because you may not. I hear people talk about TikTok and certain like algorithms when they try and promote their businesses, and they're like, it thinks I'm one thing, so it's not allowing me to promote in these other ways or reach other people that I'm like, no, these are my people too. And it's like, no, these are not your people. Algorithm says no. So stop it.
interesting. Yeah. I'm not on TikTok. You're on TikTok, correct?
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm more of a viewer. I am on there. I have an account, right? But I go on there to look at other people do cool things. I've yet to post anything.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I'm not on TikTok, but I'd be interesting to see how it's different than the other platforms. Because it is interesting seeing how they're all different, you know. Yeah.
There are elements, of course, that are exactly the same with all of them. There's that, like, based on what you have watched, these are suggestions. Based on your friends, these are suggestions. Based on your viewing history, these are things you might like. And I'm like, you're right. Oh, man. Anyways, let's get into this episode.
Yeah.
Yee! It's a good one. I mean, they're all good.
Yeah.
So we're on season 2, episode 5 of The Umbrella Academy. This episode has so much good stuff. We start off with like a box from the jungles of the Congo opens up. There's a monkey in there. There's the mom of the Umbrella Academy unit, who in season 1 we find is actually a robot version. But in season 2, in an earlier episode, we meet the real version in an earlier time in the 60s where she meets Scrooge McDuck style dad. But she was at one point a real person, is a sweetheart, is Southern Belle, and is also like a scientist, doctor person, I think, both. So this episode opens with actual live person in the 60s mom character. Do you remember her name? I can't think of it at the time.
I don't. Yeah.
We heard it in the episode we met her in earlier in season 2, but we'll just call her mom. We see her bonding with training for space through a NASA program, presumably, that she works with as a scientist / doctor, who we come to find is Pogo, who we know from season 1, the family primate, but is walking, talking, knows multiple languages, genius of his own in season 1, who is killed by Vanya, spoiler alert, in season 1. And we've yet to really get back into Pogo in season 2, with the exception of a brief scene right before Diego gets shanked by that timeline daddy. But yeah, we open this episode meeting mom, bonding with Pogo, who we learn is from the Congo, shipped to NASA to be trained as a astronaut to go to space. We see this montage, super smart. She bonds with also that timeline daddy in real life. We see that bond being made and them kind of falling in love, teaching, taking care of Pogo, baby Pogo. It's not funny, but like Pogo is sent to space in this montage, and then on re-entry, he burns up, baby. I mean, he don't burn up completely, but like it doesn't go well. And they have to like via CPR from the mom back at NASA in the laboratory after they grab Pogo body. Again, not fully burned, but jacked up and dead. I say dead because she's in love with that timeline daddy and he got tricks in his bag and powerful friends and potions. He comes in with this syringe of stuff. Sees she's like, no, he's staying. Doesn't want her to be sad. Also, I think is very invested in this animal astronaut. And baby, the syringe. They shoot him up and he comes right on back. You see his skin, the burns start healing. So you know it's a regenerating situation. So that's a powerful syringe that he was just like, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this episode opens.
Yeah, and it's just like they kind of become like this family unit, and Pogo does this drawing of like him, Scrooge McDuck, and the mom character. And the dad character doesn't like throw away that drawing or anything, and you're like, is this the family that the dad really wanted this whole time? And it's interesting.
It is, and you really think like, because you've gotten to know that like Scrooge McDuck dad character in both timelines is kind of a cold character who treated them more as a business transaction, even though yes, somewhat as his children and gave them somewhat of a family unit, still kind of cold. And I think that is a fair thought, Mark, and an excellent point. Like you really do think maybe this is the family he did have and wanted, but of course we find out the mom character he made into a robot, so something happened to her, right? She had to be made into a robot. And yeah, it's just like sad because then we see how like he kind of treats the Umbrella Academy siblings and it doesn't feel as warm, and you kind of feel maybe bad for that timeline dad because you do have that thought like he loves this little super unique family unit of smart astronaut baby Pogo, the mom character who you know he's truly in love with and like truly loves him. It's like a real loving family unit. Another thought, because it's about to cut to another scene, but in that family unit thought and in the talking point of that syringe that regenerated the burns and brought Pogo back to life, let's recall for anyone who has not seen season 1, spoiler alert, everywhere, they're everywhere. At the end of season 1, Vanya kills Pogo, or so we thought, because now knowing he has this shot of regenerating serum in his system, is he really dead? I mean, he seems to be, because like antlers fully went through his body at multiple points.
Yeah.
But now in this season 2 episode 5, you're like, maybe he's not. Like if someone pulled him off of there and he's able to regenerate, maybe he's like somewhere we gonna see him later. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they're going to revisit that original timeline or not, you know?
I was like, okay, mystery. I had to say that I didn't want to like let that escape me because I was like, this is tea and it needs to be spilled. um, we cut to like flashing back outside of the party, back at that 60s timeline, Scrooge McDuck dad's like party house that he's at with
Yeah.
real mom character,
Mhm.
where Diego, Five, and Lila have snuck into, have encountered the three bad bros in the last episode, fought them off, are pursuing the dad character, who is like part of the Majestic 12, this kind of group in real life, even that is covered in mystery and mystique. But it's like people are scattering at the end of this party. Lila has kind of shown her hand in super fighting skills and protecting Five, which is now her mission from the handler, instead of Diego. And she's kind of trying to play it off like didn't happen, nothing to see here, and business as usual. But we cut to Five calling her out, like, who are you? I saw those mad fighting skills. And she's like, you could say thank you. He was like, or I could say you're a liar and you're hiding something. And like, what, and, like, calls her out. She's like, you needed my help. So whatever. And Diego calls her out too. He's like, he's right, Lila. Like, what was that? Which I love moments like that, because when one character tries to act like something didn't happen, I can't stand it when the other characters do the same. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, someone call that out. And they do.
Yeah, Five is straight up like, if I see you again, I'm gonna kill you. Walks off. And then Lila's just like, well, isn't Five like that, Diego? And Diego's just like, I mean, yeah, but I don't like, I know liars. And I just like to just know why they're lying, what they're lying about.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't have time for this. So he walks off.
Yep. And she's like, oh man. She's in a tight spot. I mean, I think we're all, the viewers, Five and Diego, like, you just got called out. You kind of showed your hand a little bit, like, what are you gonna do? We're not all rooting for you maybe as much as before, but we're still like, what's she gonna do?
Yeah.
And then we cut away. We go to Klaus waking up on the floor of Allison's kitchen after having broken his longtime sobriety, after having met and confronted this timeline's love of his, Dave, and it did not go well. So he's drunk on Allison's floor, post binge drinking. He's like, drink with me. Allison, I'm sad. I'm sad, drink with me. And she's like, no. And he's like, but your marriage is falling apart and you could probably use a drink. And she's like, you're right. Which I think is so cute, because each super sib has such a unique individual with one another relationship,
Yeah.
in the complexity of all of their group dynamic.
Yeah.
So yeah, and drinking commences. She's like, I got good alcohol in the blender. Let's get it going. So they do, and we cut away and cut to Vanya waking up with Lady Farmhouse McGee post boink. Okay, we get some boinking in this season. Yes, live your life, super sibs. Live your life. Get it in. Yes. So Vanya and Lady Farmwife McGee have gotten it on. Super cute, kind of morning after in the bed, kind of talk at those pillow talk moments where you're like, oh, let's run away together, but they're like kind of serious, right?
Well, like Vanya's serious.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think there's another good point in here, because in those moments, two people can seem serious with one person not really actually being serious. And I think that's kind of the case, that it seems like Lady Wife McGee is serious. She says it in a way where, you know, she wants that to be the reality. And
Yeah.
she's not fully letting on that she knows it can't be yet. She's still talking like, we could go somewhere, just us, right? And it's like, oh, that's cute. Vanya actually believes it though. You might not want to make her mad. Cause like, hey, ooh. And then Harlan Sr. You see him in the distance through the window of the bedroom that they are in, driving down the driveway. So they're like, oh snap, he's home. So they get out of the bed and get dressed so that they don't get caught, basically. I think that's like mostly all of what happens around that. They have clearly made the physical connection that you could see building in the prior episodes. So you know that there is gonna have to be some type of version of a reckoning. They've now hit and reached an apex in their relationship that doesn't have to be the end, but you know is going to be a turning point in some shape, form, or fashion for the dynamic of the family unit the five of them have kind of created. All right, and then we go back to 5, Lila and Diego back at Elliot's. Oh wait, no, 5, Luther and Diego back at Elliot's place, which is like Super Sid Batcave, where they're all convening. And 5 was like, y'all, we got 5 days left.
I don't know. The vibe that I got was like, they're super dysfunctional. Yeah.
And that's tough because you're like, y'all gotta save this world.
Especially, I think that group of 3, because I think number 1, 5, and Diego all at different points have felt that they were the leader of the group, you know?
And Luther, right?
Yeah, Luther, Diego, and 5. I think like at all different points of the show between season 1 and season 2, I think they've all felt that they were like just the leader. I think Diego just always feels like he's the hero of any scene that he's in. 5, given his age, I think he feels like he always knows what's best. And then Luther has kind of come out of that leadership role, but I think he's still an alpha in the sense that it's tough to tell him what to do, you know? So yeah, so hard for that particular group of 3, I think, to agree on something in that setting.
And I think they even discussed that. They're like, yo, Diego, they're all like, how are we going to reach Dad? We've got to reach Dad. And they're like, well, at least I didn't get shanked by him, right? And they're all kind of throwing these verbal jabs. And I think Luther is like, at least I didn't get shanked, or he shanked you. And then Diego's like, well, he shanked your heart. And I was like, oh! I was like, facts. Not literally, but he definitely shanked some bodies and some hearts. I thought that was so funny and sad, but I thought it was, to your point, a milestone enough to like speak on the fact that they were talking about how dysfunctional they each are in each of their relationships with their dad. I was like, y'all better speak on the truth. There, something else that happens in their dialogue here is that Luther shares with them, because they're like, we've got to talk to him. None of us have been able to even like get close enough to talk to him. And Luther's like, that's not quite true. And he shares with the group that after he landed and kind of had to find his place, because I think at this point he's like been there a year as far as his drop into this timeline, he hunted down their dad before any of them got there, really, on his own. Found the address, took a Greyhound bus, and found the dad, went to the house. There was a gathering or a party of sorts, and walked in, saw him, talked to him, and was like, I'm your son from the future. You know about time travel. You like, you know me? And he like denies everything hard.
That
Like,
was tough to watch.
it was, and I think it seemingly was purposefully tough to watch because they even make the people at the party turn and watch and hear and like cringe in the background, and it, because he shuts him down so hard, not just like a stranger, but like with some digs like, it's not about you. Whatever you think you know, you don't. And if you were my son, I would be highly disappointed that you are. Like, it's so cold.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen season 1, but I feel like in season 2 we get more information for just how cold the dad character is to these kids. Because I guess maybe in the season 1 it was more so like flashback stuff,
Yeah,
to when they were children, but then seeing him treat them the same way even as adults, it's kind of like I don't think he likes them.
no, man, you definitely get the sense that he does not. And in that scene with Luther in this season and in this episode, he even says, and technically, yes, this is before the actual real timeline where he actually adopts them as his children that become the Umbrella Academy. Not that that changes how he treats them for real, but he says in this episode to Luther and all of this cold public ridicule and shutdown, I don't like children, and if I did, I wouldn't have any like you. Like, he really shanked his heart, like Diego said. It's so, you feel so bad once again for Luther. Oh my gosh.
I'm hoping something happens in, I don't know when, but at some point where Luther just kind of like gets a confidence boost, something.
Right? Or like, I'm gonna be honest, I hope he gets like love or at least laid. I think either one of those will be both big wins, but he needs a solid win. I feel so bad for him, and not like a performative win, kind of like Diego's right now with Lila. That it's kind of a win. He's got his boink on, but like, with who though? Oh my gosh, not a beer, just a bubbly. Label out, sponsor us. Bubbly, the alternative for when you don't want to be a LaCroix girl. Hashtag, I like LaCroix too.
I like the phrase, not a beer, a bubble.
Right? I'm telling you, we make jingles and we make slogans. Support your local Black person. Hire us. Let's see. I think next we go to Vanya again at Dad Farmhouse Dough. And she shows up, I think, back at the farmhouse the next morning or something, or maybe we cut back to the farmhouse. Breakfast is being cooked, I think, after Harlan has gotten home, post boink morning, right? He doesn't know about, of course, about the boinking. Harlan Jr. is with Vanya at the kitchen table, chilling. She's trying to like stay cool because Harlan Sr. is like touching on his wife because that's his wife and stuff, and like excited to be home and whatever. Vanya gets quietly upset and cracks the windows. I'm like, oh, ooh, whoa. Harlan Jr. recognizes, because again, if you have not watched our previous episodes, go back and watch those, because we talk about how in the previous episode 3 of season 2, yes, Harlan gets upset. Harlan Jr. gets upset, runs away, drowns in a nearby lake, and is brought back to life because he does die. He drowns. And Vanya literally breathes a piece of herself unknowingly into Harlan Jr. So at this moment, Harlan Jr. can sense her sound vibrations that crack the windows when she's getting upset. And he like puts his little hand on her hand. It's so like cute and comforting. Also reminds the viewer like they have a bond. I think a double bond. Like as people who get each other, she's good for him, and they share that piece of her now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then do we go to Diego and Luther walking? Is that what's next?
We go back to Lila and the handler.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the hotel room after the party that she's now, both super sips have walked away from her, calling her on like, you're hiding things. Mm-hmm. And so now she's back with her mama at that hotel room like, you lied to me, because the handler told Lila that the commission, the like time bureau place, knew what they were doing and that they were out there doing their thing. Not true. Now Lila knows that, because at that party, the 3 bad bros beat her and the super sibs up. And now she knows, like, Mom, they tried to kill me again, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so she has to come clean. The handler's like, you're right. They don't know we're here, right? They don't know what we're doing. But that's for everyone's safety. I would tell you if you needed to know, and same goes for everyone else. This is just the plan, and not everyone needs to know all of every plan. The words of a manipulator. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, we learn in that scene, the handler is like, did you bring me what I asked for? And she has requested Diego's knife. And Lila did bring it to her. She drops it on the table. So she's stolen one of Diego's knives and given it to the handler. And you go, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Right? Because you're like, that's not right. That's not yours. You should not have it. Ooh, let's see. Oh, and then, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just, I mean, it makes sense because the handler is Lila's mom, essentially. And so you understand why Lila trusts the handler, because the handler is the only person in her life. That being said, it's, I don't know what the word is. It's just interesting seeing Lila being manipulated by the handler in this way. Like, a murder weapon from Diego? What would the handler want a murder weapon? You know?
It's like the fact that the handler is her mom completely blinds her from all of the spy training that she has. Like, one would think you are being played and you've got to see you're being played, because it's semi-clear, right? I've asked you for the weapon of someone who I've asked you to infiltrate. As the double agent, how would one not go, this is what I would be asked to do this way. How can I not see it being done to me in reverse? It is like, what? I don't know. I always hate moments where I think our character is like written to the highest degree of its own intellect, and then kind of moments like that happen, and I'm like, oh, come on, man. We didn't. That feels like a softball character variable. Like, why did we backslide a little bit? But whatever. Before we leave this scene, we see on the table of the hotel room that the handler has like spray paint and supplies, like to make what, if as a viewer you may have been paying attention to, which will come up later in this episode, the gold hinted canisters that come from the commission, that give the orders, right? So it seems as though there are supplies to make a makeshift one in the hotel room on the table of the handler, which doesn't get explained in this moment, but I think it's key because they clearly make sure that that's seen. Okay, we cut to back at Elliot's place, the Super Sib convening Batcave with Luther, Vanya, and Diego sitting around eating. Like, Elliot has like fixed this ambrosia salad, which when fixed well can be good, but is almost the fruitcake equivalent of salads. Like, oh, people are like not always super down, and it's made to be unappealing in this episode. Not a huge important plot point, but I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Diego is like super jumpy because Vanya is there, and this is the first time they're meeting one another in this timeline. And so he's like, don't get on me for remembering the last time I was around her. She had an energy tentacle in my chest, suspending me in the air close to death. So pardon my jumpiness. And she's like, I'm really sorry if that counts for anything. He's like, you know what? It does. Thank you. Which was funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Five shows up with Allison and Klaus, both still a little drunk, but hey, the rest of the gang has now arrived. This is the first time in season 2 in this timeline that they're all convening together and being brought together finally.
Yeah. I'd say the most interesting reunion is Allison and Vanya. Vanya's like, can't believe I have a sister. You know, it's just, I got stressed because the last time they ran into each other was just, you know, it's rough.
Yeah, Vanya cut her throat and almost killed her. The reunion between Vanya and Allison goes surprisingly well. And it's like, oh, hi, I'm so glad I have a sister. It's great. They're like, I think Klaus is still himself. He's like, did we all get sexier? What happened? Which is funny. It is another beautifully lit shot. Shout out to the lighting director and or director of whatever made this moment in the foyer of what seems like Elliot's building, or in his loft apartment. Oh, that's what it is. It's like a double-storied shop in which some of them are on the top looking over when Allison and Five and Klaus walk in. But it's like the lights are coming through some of the windows. It's beautifully lit. What else? Anything else happened in that one?
I don't believe so.
I think I don't know if I'd love your insight on this. I don't know if we've clearly been told this. I feel like I know it. I've wondered it, but I don't know if it's been clear from the writers or in the show. At the end of this episode, or I'm sorry, at the end of this scene, they're all sitting kind of upstairs talking, and then they kind of disperse. Luther doesn't get like upset, but he's like, after the rundown, after they're all convened, he's like, all right, I'm over it. Similar to how he reacted to Five initially in the club working for Jack Ruby in like episode 1 of season 2. And so he storms off and Diego goes after him. So after they've convened, there's an immediate scatter again, right? And something interesting is said by Klaus to the others, because I think it's out someone who's not Klaus asks if Ben is here, Ghost Bro, who only Klaus can see because Klaus can see dead people, and just by proxy, the other Super Sib is dead. And he tells them that no, Ben is not there, that ghosts can't time travel. And he says it plainly. And Ben is like in the room, but again, only Klaus can see or hear him. And you hear Ben go like, come on, man, like acknowledging that he knows Klaus told the rest of them that too. So it doesn't seem like they know Ben is there at all. And I'm not sure as the viewer if we're made to think that Klaus is being malicious or intentional, because he says it so lightheartedly and in ways that you think, oh, he can't mean this in a harmful way, but it's like, why is he lying, right? Ben is there and he's the only one who could tell or confirm that. So why is he not telling the truth about that?
That's a good question. Part of me wonders, was that just like a throwaway joke?
Right? Because he makes so many.
Yeah. That's my initial thought, is that it's a throwaway joke, only because like you know, the bond between those two is so strong. It's just like, if there's any maliciousness, it's just like for a brief period of time. It's like how they argue. They're like always bickering like brothers, you know. But I mean, like underneath that, you know, they're like very closely linked. So that's a great question, though.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, I kind of took it as sort of just like, not him ribbing the other person, but just like, I'm angry with you right now in this moment, so I'm just gonna not acknowledge your presence. Kind of like when Ben, in early on in the season, when Ben didn't like help out during the poker game scuffle. I mean, like, you know, that could have spelled trouble, but I think he figured like, he'll be all right. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, like, because I see that correlation also, that kind of like playful Super Sib ribbing. It's just different with Super Sibs. It's just, you know, the context is different, so it seems sometimes more than it is. I also wonder about the other side of it in this case, because though that could be playful Super Sib ribbing between Klaus and Ben, he still lied to the rest of the siblings. And so that feels like an extension of a ribbing. Because I could see it as total ribbing between the two, Ben and Klaus, but it's like, why would he not? And there wasn't enough context as far as dialogue and a follow-up to know if he meant it for real or if his next breath was going to be like, yeah, he's here, right? Even something so subtle. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a good question. I don't know why he did that.
And I don't actually remember the rest of the season. I always like rewatch it fresh right before we record. So maybe they mention it and clarify later, but who knows? And if anyone watching, all like the twos of you watching, or however many, if you know, put it in the comments. Tell us. Help us. Okay. So we cut to the handler and Lila outside of the house that the three bad bros are living in, the cat lady house who they killed early on in the season. So we cut to Lila and handler outside of that house, and you're like, what? And even Lila is like, what are we doing? Because she, though a talented super spy double agent, is so often along for the ride of manipulation when it comes to her mother, like we've touched on. And so I think as a viewer, you're made to believe / asked to put together the dots of they're there to drop off the fake canister that the handler had supplies to make in her hotel room, because she mentions that Lila has always been such a good climber. And we zoom in on the roof of the bad bros house.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a canister that Lila's going to climb up that her mom made that she's gonna drop to deliver a fake mission to the three bad bros. And she just kind of goes along with it. I'm like, girl, come on. Anyways, so it's super short. We cut to back at Elliot's loft, Super Sib Bat Cave. Super Sib Bat Cave. I wrote like they present the grassy knoll footage as a possible variable of how and why the this apocalypse is coming about. Anyways, because they're all sitting there talking. So they're like, well, Dad was in the grassy knoll footage of the Kennedy footage or the Franklin footage. And so they think like it must be a part of it. And of course, Diego is like, yes, it has to be. Dad is here to kill JFK. We've got to stop the assassination. He's like hero complex on 10. Five tells them that like, I've seen all of you die. So let's just take a second, stop yapping and really figure this out. Because all of your ideas are going to get you killed. I've seen it. So we've got to stop that from happening. So let's take a second. Yeah. Right? Because he's like, I've been there. And he has this like flashback. And this is when Luther is like, I'm leaving. That's so much. I am not a hero and none of us are. We probably keep bringing this on ourselves. And I think it's funny that I think Klaus repeatedly says throughout this scene, if not throughout the episode, like, is it Vanya's fault again? I'm not trying to be a dick, but like, it's her fault the first time, and maybe it is. Which I think is interesting and funny. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So yeah, Five tries to stop Luther from storming off, but you know, Luther throws him across the room to save himself. Five time jumps to the outside, sees Lila outside. And I'm like, girl, you are everywhere, like a cell tower. You are everywhere. And he sees her not in two places at one time, but like she's on the roof and then she's like on the street over there. And you see him go, like, so he very much picks up on that. There is almost no way just a regular non-Super Sib person could have done that. He pursues her because he's intrigued, and so is the viewer. I'm like, yes, go figure it out. Let's go. And then, you know, Luther storms off. Diego kind of gets up to chase him. And then that leaves Vanya, Klaus, and Allison inside. And I think it's funny that because Vanya is the only one out of the three of them that's has not currently been day drinking and is not semi-drunk right now. But Klaus is like, well, I don't know when they're going to come back. So how about tacos? Anybody? And they're like, can that destroy the world? And they're like, there's only one way to find out. Let's get some tacos. I love it. When in doubt, tacos.
Tacos are great. They're really great.
I gotta find a curbside pickup taco joint. I gotta stop just like cooking my own food and like support my local. I think I talked about that last time. I think China Eatery or something is doing.
Northern China Eatery. Mm-hmm.
I gotta actually act on that because like some tacos would be amazing. Some dumplings, curbside, please. Yes, let me roll on through and pick them up. And pick them up. Let me roll on through and pick them up. Hey, and pick them up. You on, right?
It's good.
Yeah. They just come out, you know. Anyways, so they're like, let's go get some tacos. So they leave. Everyone has scattered, true Super Sib style, though now they have scattered mostly almost in half. The only singular Super Sib out there is Five, who has gone off in pursuit of Lila, who was outside when he popped out there. So he's like, let me go chase this tail. Or not like tail as in like, but tail as in like a lead. So we cut to Diego and Lila's. No, Diego and Luther. I get my L's mixed up in my notes. Diego and Luther, they're like broing it out, kind of talking it out. And they're talking about their independent hero complexes, which I think is so interesting that they're so aware of their twisted, crunched up relationships. It's like a very healthy place to be, I guess. They're not, I don't know, they're still in that journey, but they're talking about it. And then Diego goes something to the effect of, there's a car been following us, a long black car, since we've been walking, and maybe for a while. I don't know how long he says, but then it rolls up.
But yeah, and then the car shows up with an invitation for a light supper. And I love Luther's response, because Luther's just like, light? A light supper? Am I gonna have to eat beforehand? You know, like,
yeah. Right? So, okay, I need to like pregame some snacks, have something in my system, because you're not going to feed me a full meal. And I am a full human. I do love that, again, the writers make sure to keep the comedy in there. And sometimes that means the reality, which is good stuff. I really appreciate. So yeah, they've been, and it clearly is from the dad, right? Who, because it says, to my pursuers. Clearly he's aware they have been following him. He's shanked one of them, he avoided a couple others, and it's like clearly sending this invite via this driver to deliver this invitation. So you know, like, he is as keen to what's going on, that, or more so than he gives off. Cut back to Klaus, Allison, and Vanya. They are drinking and hanging in the salon. There's nobody else in it but the three of them. They're all, this is where they talk about some of that awkward Allison and Luther love, because they are super sibs. So not sibs by blood, but are in the same family and treat each other as siblings, right? They are adopted siblings. And so we know in season 1, and are reminded in season 2, but kind of dance around the fact that there is a love attraction between Luther and Allison. You don't think anything has ever happened, but they solidify it in this scene in talking about it, because they're like, so you're married now? How is that? Is that awkward with you and Luther? Right? You guys have always been like, you know, kind of had this thing. And she's like, we've never done anything, not even kissed. So I think as the viewer, you're like, I didn't think so, but it's nice to know for sure. But enough so they have a thing emotionally that the other super sibs know that they have a thing. And so does she. They don't deny the fact that they have a thing, Luther or Allison or the rest of them. But it is nice to know for sure nothing has ever happened.
it's also kind of funny because they're sort of like not filling in, but doing like some recaps of people. And Klaus goes to Vanya, is just like, you know, her current like farmer frau, I think is what he calls her, which is a huge improvement over her last love interest. And Vanya's like, what happened last? And then they just kind of keep going. I thought that was funny.
He does say, better than your last interest, the serial killer, because
right, yeah.
was pretty bad. But that is so funny, because she's like, again, not just playing the card she doesn't remember, she just still does not remember. She gets little glimpses and dreams and recollections, but girl is missing most of the book, most of the pages still. Maybe for the best, you know. So let's see. Oh, shout out to the late great Sam Cooke, because we hear and see a cute little. We hear the song behind what is about to be like a montage of cutting between scenes, and it's "Twisting the Night Away" by Sam Cooke. Twisting, twisting. Everybody twisting the night away. Yeah, so that's my little version, but it's such a good song, not necessarily accurate wordage. I just put in twisting and took the parts of the song that I like and jammed it together.
Yeah.
So good. Love me some Sam Cooke. Yes, Sam Cooke.
It's wild. Like, I don't listen. Sam Cooke is not like in my regular rotation, like day to day in life, but it's like he still comes up on occasion just naturally because he's Sam Cooke. There's like a handful of people where their voice is just like, it's just like their voice is so otherworldly, I feel like he has one of those legendary voices. I put him in that group of people,
Yes, for sure. 100% agree. I love so much of the soundtrack behind the show, but occasionally I'm like, yes, I'm here for that song. Yes. So that definitely happened here. And I was like, yes, just stand the night away. Yeah. And then we go to like the Three Bad Bros, and that fake canister that the handler had Lila deliver inside was Diego. And so you go, like his picture. And so as the viewer, I think you're made to believe the handler is setting Diego up to look like he has done something to get the Three Bad Bros against him. Because in this scene that we're at now with the Three Bad Bros, they're in the forest, having followed some trail, you can surmise. Diego's knife you see stuck in a tree, the one that Lila gave the handler that she stole from Diego. So you know that there's a connection there. It's the same one. And the Three Bad Bros see it, approach it. One of them in particular out of the three steps up to the tree where the knife is. And again, the Three Bad Bros are the commission hitmen, like professional commission time bureau people who are trained. So this is another moment where I'm like, they knew better. Why are we as the viewer made to pick this low-hanging fruit? And why were they written to pick this low-hanging fruit? But they walk one of them right up to this tree, basically step on a landmine, because apparently they don't have any spy skills in this moment. And they are blown to smithereens, that one, and is killed. So, of course, as the viewer, you think, well, the remaining Two Bad Bros gonna definitely be going after Diego now. We cut to another great song in the background of this episode. It's a great song. I don't know the artist that covers the song in this episode, but the original artist is Billie Eilish. The original song is Bad Guy. I almost said Bad Boys. But her song Bad Guy, which I love, and I love Billie Eilish. Oh my God, Billie Eilish, come on our channel. Please guest on our channel. Small channel, big guest. Yeah. But there is a group, I had to Shazam it. Shout out to Shazam. It is a group called The Interrupters who covers Billie Eilish's Bad Guy song in a really cool, funky version. And we cut to Lila and Five, because Five was in pursuit of her last time we saw them. And they get into a fight scene in this like warehouse place that he has followed her to. And that song, the Billie Eilish Bad Guy cover by The Interrupters, is playing in the background. So you get to enjoy a great fight scene and a great song.
And that draws out the handler in Five. get to yapping. The handler has a proposal for 5. Yeah.
Also in that scene, right, not necessarily right prior, but during the fight scene, prior to the handler revealing herself, we see more of Lila's power, and yes, that she has a superpower. She is clearly somewhat of a super civ. Not that she's part of the Umbrella Academy, but we do know from season 1, if you have seen season 1, that there were a whole bunch of super civs born on the same day with powers. Something like that, like a large number, more than the Umbrella Academy, but they're just the ones who were adopted by Scrooge McDuck daddy. So now we know Lila is very likely one of those many, but was just kind of taken in. I don't know if we should say adopted at this point, but taken in and raised by the handler. So as the viewer, you go, if Scrooge McDuck daddy did this for the reasons we know he did it for, he knew the power and impact of having a number of those super civs that were born with powers in his family, right? In his company, in his charge. So you go, is that what the handler did with Lila? I know I had that thought, because you see very clearly, I don't know if it's the exact same power as Fives, but it's very similar, because he goes to hit her and then she jumps to behind him. So it's very similar, if not the same, which means it's a pretty bad ace power.
Yeah.
So it's
I noticed that watching, because I watched that fight scene again recently, and I did notice her, like, you catch her covering ground and the camera cuts away, so it's just like, oh, maybe it was just like an edit, but you're like, she's moving very fast. Yeah.
Yes. So it's nice to know that not only are we getting to the fact that she's got these handler connections very clearly and is working multiple storylines, kind of as a double agent, but also we have this other reveal of, like, she has powers too, which is huge, because so far it's just the super civs, I think, in the entirety of the show that have these powers. As far as we know, there are more, but these are the only ones we've seen, and now we can add Lila to the list, which is cool. So yeah, and then we cut after the handler reveals herself. Five knows what's up, says, you can come out now. Handler steps out, reveals the proposal, and then we cut to Vanya sneaking back home at the end of this day, presumably because it's nighttime, when Vanya sneaks back home to the farm, been drinking with Klaus and Allison, so a little tipsy, and sees Lady Farm Wife McGee in the kitchen in, like, nightgown, hair down, typical 60s housewife sign of, like, we busy in the other room. And we know Harlan Sr. is back in town. And I don't think Vanya puts those dots together yet, because she's a little tipsy and she's like confessing her love and going, like, you know how we were talking about running away together? Let's do it. And we got to do it now. You don't understand. We've got 6 days left. I can't explain, but we can do it. We got to do it now. But Lady Wife McGee is like, no. And then Harlan Sr. comes out in his boxers. He ain't nothing to look at, on top of, like, you know, that is dims the signs of they getting busy in the other room. And that's not good for the love story of Vanya and Lady Wife McGee.
Yeah, that's an uncomfortable scene. Because as you just said, Harlan Sr. is in the other room, and Vanya, not really realizing that, just like, when are we going to run away and be together? I love you. The world ends in 6 days. And she's just like, Vanya, now is not the time. This is just, I cannot have this conversation with you right now. She's like, but why not? I love you. The two of us, we're supposed to be together forever, romantically. It's like, Vanya, no. But I told you there's no time. We don't say it now, then when? Frankly, you almost kind of wonder, like, Harlan had to have heard that, right? I mean, like.
But I mean, they play it in a way where he doesn't. He enters the scene right after that. So he should / could have heard that in reality, but in the guise of the show, they have him not hear it. And he comes up in that moment, like touching on Lady Wife McGee, like, come on back to bed, right? And it's like, please don't make her mad right now. Like, she's gonna rip off your dick with a sound wave. How embarrassing. Oh man, explain that one at the next football game. Man. Anyways, so it's like, yeah, not a good time city. Post boink with someone else. Come on down to Awkward Town. And she says something, Lady Wife McGee, that I wrote down because it's such a killer thing. When you say it, you are one who's got to know the impact of what you say, even if you don't want to acknowledge it. You know what saying something like this is and the impact of hearing something like this. She goes, when Vanya is like, but what about all those things we were just talking about, right? All that pillow talk earlier, post boink. And Lady Wife McGee's response is, those are the lies we tell each other to get through the damn day. I was like, bitch, you better keep it real. I was like, oh, because I think many of us probably say those things as just humans outside of a 1960s housewife who is yet to, I guess she's acknowledged her, romantic and partnership preferences, but still, I think it speaks to the time and in moments and situations where people say things outside of the context of the reality in which they have to then apply, which may change to more of that statement. Like, those are the lies we tell each other to get through the damn day. Oh, what a heavy line. I was like, you better speak truth.
Yeah. And it kind of just makes you think about like the reality that she's dealing with, like, because in the 60s, I don't know the history too well, but I don't know, could women even have credit cards at that point?
I mean, when has it not been The Handmaid's Tale? I would say it may not have been quite that. I think probably some degrees of that. It was very have the dinner fixed and cook when I get home. If she, like, to financially leave a husband and to even get a divorce without then being put in the loony bin potentially, right? Or losing custody of your child just by filing for divorce. I do think all are related to, do they have credit cards? I think it's some variables of that for sure, applicable to the time.
Yeah.
So she's like, I can't leave with you. And it's almost like code for like, what we had was great, but I have this life that I don't have an out from. Like, yes, the idea of whatever we talked about is what I truly want, but we can't all have what we want, basically. And so she shuts that shit down. And it's sad to watch. Yeah. And then the soundtrack selection for this episode, like, someone give that person an award now, because at the tail end of this moment, or maybe during this scene, you hear the song, it's It's a cover, a Swedish cover, actually, by a group called My Kulsvik. I don't know Swedish, so sorry. But that's the name of the group, and it's a cover of the song Hello by Adele. And it's like the saddest, like, most beautiful song about post-relationship feels or whatever, that is so fitting yet hilariously juxtaposed of this moment. And I was like, I found so much joy. Oh. So yes, that happened. It was hilarious, beautiful, and horrifying. So many moments that are just like, ew. And then also, while the Swedish cover of Adele's Hello is playing, we see a cut to a mini scene of like a mini Viking funeral for the third bad bro. The only body part remaining is his foot or leg, ankle, foot. And the two other bad bros giving him a little mini Viking funeral, put his leg on a little, paddle boat situation in a little body of water, and like little flame, right? Sad, but also a little funny because it's not like a big Viking boat. It's a for real, like little paddle fishing boat. And it's like, and then this same night, montage cut back and forth while this song is playing. We also cut to Diego and Luther sitting outside this same outside eatery table area that Luther and Allison sat at a couple episodes ago as they met for the first time. So we're back there. It's closed. It's nighttime, but Luther and Diego are there chatting it up and broing it out. And Klaus arrives outside same night, montage cut to him arriving back at his house. Last we saw his house, his followers had found him, followers of his cult, and he had run away. But he clearly is back outside the house, goes back in, and braces his followers.
Then we see Allison and her husband, and she's like, sit down. I'm gonna tell you what's going on. And then you see his face. He's like, good, thank you.
Yes, that was what my face was doing too. Yeah. Because she totally didn't do that when she had the opportunity outside the salon after the sit-in the next morning. He was like, tell me, and she didn't. So at the end of the episode, yes, even as a viewer, I was like, about time, get to it. Get your marriage back, girl. Black love. Oh my gosh. But then that's that episode. That is the end of season 2, episode 5. It's a good one.
Good. A lot happens.
Yes. And a lot like pops off and comes to a semi-head, in which is a trampoline for a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah, I'm so excited for the rest of the season. The show was so good. The season is so good. And as always, they did not disappoint.
Yeah.
Well, that has been yet another episode of
Did you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did it.
Great.
Yes.
Did you see that?